This report brought to you by the Richmond Club, where investors and high-growth companies meet.
Our final speaker is the President and CEO of MPX International Corp. Please welcome Mr. Scott Boys.
I'm lucky I get to go last. I got to keep everybody awake. I can't even see everybody out there. So, get the legal stuff over. Just what you need, right, is another cannabis company. You've probably been addressed by several of them over the past few months. We'd like to convince you that we're just a little bit different. Our focus is not so much on Canada or the United States, and I'm sure most of the companies that have visited you have talked about their markets and their plans. We're focusing on the international market. If you look at the size of Europe, the estimated market size of Europe is larger than that of North America significantly. And then if you look at the global market, Prohibition Partners has estimated that the global cannabis market is in the $800 billion range. And that's if you include the emerging CBD markets, which are flourishing throughout most of the world, the medical cannabis markets, and the adult use or recreational cannabis markets. First, I want to tell you that we've done this before. So MPX Bioceuticals was one of the first companies to get listed on the CSE with US assets. And over the course of, I've been involved with the industry for about 5 years, but we did our first transaction in January of 2017. And over the course of 2 years, we opened up, we're in the process of opening up 12 dispensaries. We had 6 cultivation facilities in 5 US markets. We raised $100 million in cash, most of it, believe it or not, in Europe, because the Canadian market wasn't too responsive to US investments at that point. And we sold it in February of this year for $835 million. So the investors that got in with us early, in those early rounds at that $100 million range, all went away with smiles on their face. We were running at about $100 million run rate when we sold the US assets off to Iantis in February of this year. The current management team, we had a small asset here in Canada. We kept that asset. We kept the current management team. We have rights to all the formulations, technologies, and branding that MPX had developed in the United States, and we now have control over those, and we can transpose some of those formulations, technologies, and branding into the global markets. We kept a lot of the people, the extraction people, the cultivation people, some of the expertise, some of the genetics we've kept to move once again into the global market. So we sold the assets off in February, and since February we've been a very busy group. We have now 12 dispensaries in development in various cities in Europe. We've got 6 in Western Canada. We've got 2 in central London that are selling CBD products. We're opening 2, one in Zurich and one in Geneva in Switzerland, and we're targeting one now in Cape Town, South Africa. And I could talk about the 3 different markets as we get going. We have 6 countries where we have assets in development. We have 30,000 kilograms of high CBD cannabis in cultivation in Switzerland. We're developing 3 extraction labs, and we're going to have about 32,000 square feet of cultivation around the world by the end of this year. We have $23 million in cash at the end of our last quarter. Right after we sold the assets off, the US assets off to Iantis, we immediately went back to some of those lucky shareholders that invested with us in the early rounds, and we raised about $37 million. It took us less than 3 days to raise $37 million. So everything we're talking about today is fully funded. We don't need to go back to the markets to raise capital in the near future. Our market cap is where the stock price has been floating between 45 and 55 cents, but we've done 0 marketing. We started our marketing in London last week. We've talked to a couple of the analysts here. We're trying to get some coverage established. And we do have a track record with the analysts, so we think we'll be successful there. We're projecting $91 million in revenue for the fiscal period ending September 30th, 2020. So that's 18 months from now. So how many cannabis companies do you know that were up and running at 18 months and can generate just under $100 million in revenue? And $33 million in positive cash flow for the fiscal period ending 2020. Now, if you look at Canopy Growth and their cash flow after several years, that's a pretty significant achievement. Oh, and I just missed the slide. We have warrants outstanding that give us the potential to raise about $33 million more if we need it to execute on some of our strategies. The market in the world is divided really now into three sections. There's a CBD market, which is fully legal in some countries, more restricted in other companies. It's a wellness market, but it's a consumer market. Then, of course, we have the medical cannabis market that we've been exposed to in Canada and the United States, but it's emerging in several other countries as well. And then finally, the consumer THC market, which is just now emerging in some of the countries outside of North America. We have several brands that we've got. I'll get into them individually. I'm going to walk through country by country since we're short of time. So in Canada first, we have a small grow facility just north of Toronto in Peterborough. We're doing some oil extraction there, and we're just in the process of developing a tissue culture lab. And tissue culture is something that hasn't been used extensively in the cannabis market. Typically they use clones, they cut mothers, and it's a long, tedious, and somewhat risky process. So we're developing a tissue culture operation up here. We also have a facility in Owen Sound, Ontario, a couple hours north of here. It's a much larger facility. We just got the building permits there, and it will be primarily laboratories, extraction, packaging, commercial kitchen, geared towards both the medical market and the consumer market. But only about 20% of our revenue will actually be generated out of Canada, so it's really not our primary focus. We will be developing medical products. We have a joint venture with a company out of Israel called MPXI. They've got 65 SKUs of medically products that use up to 9 different cannabinoids in different formulations. So where do we have in Europe? We have planted 70 hectares of high CBD cannabis in Switzerland, running 23 to 24% CBD content, extremely high. We've just signed a lease on a lab in Nyon, Switzerland that we'll be using for extraction. And we expect to be able to produce in the next 6 or 8 months about 4 million grams of organic Swiss-produced CBD distillate that we'll be able to sell into the global markets. And if you know right now, a distillate is selling for about $10 to $15 US a gram. So you can do the math on that one. We also have a small company there called Holy Weed, which produces 1% THC pre-rolls and so forth for the consumer market, and we've just got approval to sell the same products into Belgium, and we're looking at Italy shortly. The CBD market in London, I'm going to go back. The CBD market in London is legal there. We're opening a retail store in Soho and another one in Covent Garden. We're also opening a CBD retail store in Geneva and Zurich, and the Swiss government is now experimenting with recreational cannabis, and we hope to win 2 of those experimental licenses next year. Australia, we're a late stage applicant there. We're actually building out a facility in Tasmania to service partially the growing medical market in Australia. They're adding about 1,000 patients a month there, but also New Zealand, which is expected to go recreational next year, and some focus on Southeast Asia. Thailand has gone medical, South Korea's gone medical, Malaysia. There's several countries that have got legislation or discussions in their various legislatures to expand medical cannabis in Southeast Asia. And of course, there's also the CBD market in China, which we've actually got people exploring at the current time. And finally, you need cheap biomass. We looked at Colombia, we looked at Peru, we looked at some of the countries that some of the other players have participated in. My Spanish is not very good. We wanted to go to a place where they spoke English, where they had codified laws. We have significant investor base in South Africa. They convinced us to come down there. And we've now partnered with a wine grower in Stellenbosch, one of the premier wine growing areas of South Africa. And we're producing 6 hectares of greenhouse cultivation there, where we think we can compete on a low-cost basis with anything that's coming out of Colombia, Peru, or Latin America. First Growth is the joint venture partner. We'll eventually acquire up to about 80% of this. We've got 51% now, and we're pending a license from SAFA very shortly. So, why invest in us? We're 4 months old. Our early investors last time made a lot of money. This time we think the market is larger, our pace is faster, we've got more experience, we've got cash on hand. All we have to do is execute, and we'll be generating significant revenues over the next little while. And I'm going to give you this slide. We've shared it with the analysts, and it's on our website. You can see 91 million in revenue for the fiscal period ending 2020. About 20% of that comes out of Canada. A big chunk of it comes out of Switzerland, and a fair amount of it is coming out of Australia. And then we quickly grow from there as all these assets get in full production. We have about 200 million shares outstanding, fully diluted. We're trading at around 50 cents, so fully diluted market cap of about 100 million. 65 million, I think, is the market cap issued and outstanding. If we go to the analysts, they're going to take our 2021 revenue and they're going to multiply it by 5, and that's how they typically set their target price. So we're looking at a $2.50 to $3 stock once we get out, get fully executed, and start generating revenue, which will be before the end of this year. And we're already meeting with some of the analysts to get some coverage. So get in at 50 cents. If we can even replicate what we did last time, most of those investors got an 8 to 10 time lift, and we think we'll beat that this time.
If you enjoyed this video, please let us know. You've been watching the Richmond Club Report. If you've just come across this channel, please feel free to like and subscribe. I'm sure you'll find a lot of interesting and lucrative investment and trading ideas around here. We'll see you again soon on the next video. Cheers, guys. Have an amazing and profitable day.